Day 5 of the July 99 7-day retreat in Springwater. This morning it's birding and sawing, distant sawing, which brings to mind at the last two California retreats, where the retreat house is in the midst of groves of eucalyptus trees lining the street and up the hill. They've had all kinds of weather, and lots of these eucalyptus trees fell, or huge branches dropped. And the chainsaws were busy cutting up these logs. And some people got very upset. Disturbance of their retreat. At one retreat, there was the one before the last, a lot of trees belonging to the Dominican college had fallen, and the saws were busy making order, and one woman called the president of the college, asking, could he please stop this? We were paying a lot of money for this retreat and for the silence. And he was obliging. He stopped during the talk. Stopped the saws. Because it's a difference, a distant saw or one really close by you. It grinds on the nerves. But we often live in circumstances that grind on the nerves. So how do we live with it? Can we live with it? Which means not saying yes or no, we should be able to, or if I'm very attentive, I will be able to. But watching very finely, very subtly, what else is going on beside the sawing. And I don't mean right now birds, but within the resistance, the anger, which is aroused by the headlines. My retreat is disturbed. Couldn't they do it another time, etc. To watch what it is that keeps the anger going, or arouses it, or contributes to it. Frustration, or it may not be anger. Whatever. The word isn't the thing anyways. But the question is it possible to purify perception by beholding what comes in between? And our own psychological and physical reactions do come in between, and may abate when they're seen. When they're seen to come in between, to be a hindrance. And actually, quite a number of people learned a lot from this chainsawing about this amazing ability to drop annoyance factors by not thinking in certain terms about it. Not resisting. Not resisting. Do we know what that means? Not resisting. Noticing all the gross and subtle resistances that this body-mind has cultivated or become habituated to over a lifetime. They're subtle, and so is the attention subtle that detects them and replaces them. Because this is what really happens. It is not I drop it. Sometimes people say, you ask us to drop this or that. I don't ask people to drop things. How can we drop things? Except a bowl of cereal or something. The seeing replaces the habit that is seen. When the seeing is open and quiet and present, empty. With which I come maybe to the main topic, the question, what really is awareness? What is awareness? What is consciousness? What is attention? Are they all synonymous? And depending on how we agree to use words, they can be synonymous. We can agree to any meaning of the word that we're using, as long as we're also in agreement with what the word points at. But right now, let us define consciousness as having to do or being the movement of thinking, remembering, projecting, anticipating, knowing, everything having to do with thought, with this particular operation of the brain. I don't want to make it too complicated. When we say, I'm very self-conscious, it's really terrible to be so self-conscious. When I enter into a group of people, maybe people who came here for the first time felt self-conscious. Will I fit in? How do they see me? Will I make mistakes? This kind of self-consciousness is thinking about oneself in certain ways, positive or negative, up and down, according to our conditioning. We may have been conditioned to think of ourselves quite well, be at ease with ourselves. I don't know who really is for any kind of duration of time. Or having been conditioned to think negatively about ourselves. We talked earlier about self-hatred, self-aggrandizement, pride. All of this is thinking about oneself in certain ways, and this thinking about oneself very much affecting how the organism functions in its chemical, glandular, muscular activities. I just saw something on the news hour the other day that in some way we're very much like a certain monkey. They use that particular monkey, maybe all monkeys are like that, where being on the top of the heap makes for great energy, exuberance, self-assurance. So that monkey that was sitting there looked self-assured. And then there was a monkey who really looked depressed. He was at the bottom of sort of slumping, frowning. And likening this, actually the segment was about, what was that word? It was terrific. A luxury mania or something, needing to buy more and more and more luxurious things to feel that we're on top of the heap. This giving us great feelings of importance, good energies, whatever good means, and someone not being able to join into that acquisition spree and identification with acquisitions may feel very depleted of energy, depressed. So that's just as an example how we think we are important or unimportant, downtrodden or in control, affects how this body manifests itself, its energies, its chemicals, muscles, posture. So that's consciousness, thinking about myself, creating the world, creating what I call the real world, the reality around me, through thinking, through imaging, and through conceptualizing what people are like, what the world is like, or what it is coming to. How terrible it is, or how magnificently beautiful it is. Changing sometimes from one moment to the next. When thoughts are pleasant, things have been going well, some problem has been resolved, and the world really looks quite nice. Not threatening. And a new problem arises. And who even cares how the world looks when it's taken up with one's depressive or angry or anxious mood? So, consciousness is not just how we think about ourselves, but what we create as so-called our reality, which is different for each human being, each brain, according to its past experiences. Now, we'll include everything in past experiences, and of course its abilities, genes, DNA, faculties, talents, creates its own reality. And as long as we're living in our private reality without realizing it's mostly thought-produced and self-thought fulfilling, we are isolated from somebody else's reality. We isolate ourselves with this thought-produced world from each other. And from ourselves. So this is what we mean right now. We can agree to use the word differently at another time. Consciousness. Thought created, thought referential, self-referential. Me in the middle of it. Me as a thought, as a memory, as an image. If you don't see it this way, let's bring it up in a group and go into it. What is this me? Then there is this movement of attention. And again, I'll use it in a right now defined way, directing attention to processes, to things, to people, to one's activities. And anyone who has gone through, particularly through Zen training, but probably also mindfulness training, sort of, it permeates spiritual training. Mindfulness, attention, has learned to give some attention to one's daily movements, be it washing the dishes or dressing, driving the car, whatever, to give attention to it. Really minutely, the more minute, the better. Noticing things, how they feel, how they sound, how one's body moves in performing this task. Now, thinking back of the attention training at a Zen center, we were all quite good at it. So that when people came first to a workshop, they're very impressed with these attentive people. I don't want to speak for others, but I was very self-conscious about being attentive. I knew I was attentive and felt good about it, and felt that people who were observing me, hopefully the teacher, would see how attentive I was. Sort of living in the eyes of others with one's attentiveness. It was sort of cultivated in a not quite conscious way. One wasn't aware of what was going on. I wasn't. Maybe tangentially. And I've often used this example in a talk. I mentioned it this morning to someone who found it helpful. Here in this place, I think it was this place already, or was it at the Zen Center? I don't know. Somebody was getting cool, putting his jacket on at the beginning of a round of sitting. I was already the teacher. Sitting here, and the person was standing in the aisle in front of me, very meticulously, carefully putting on this jacket, leading each button through the buttonhole, very carefully, but not noticing that several people were piling up, that the aisles were very narrow, behind him, couldn't get through to their cushions. I think you get the point. There's lots involved in this. It's not just because it's okay to pay minute attention and still be aware, open. But there was probably, as I knew from myself, an image involved. Aren't I attentive? Do you see me being attentive? Etc. So, the way right now we're using this word, and it can be used synonymously with awareness, but right now we're using it, there is a self-centered activity to be attentive, to be mindful, because this is a good thing to be and to do and to be seen as. It is another aspect or segment of consciousness. It's not outside of it. It's within that self-referential field. So now what about awareness? It's really a tricky thing to define. One cannot define it. One can maybe say what it is not present or active in awareness, and the first thing comes to mind is self-centeredness. Awareness does not have a self-center, even though, amazingly enough, it can shed light on self-centered activity. Not judgmentally, not taking a position, not condemningly or not acceptingly either, just shedding light. Has no confinement, no borderlines. It beholds everything, but in or out of emptiness. And the emptiness not used conceptually is a very powerful concept in Buddhism, maybe elsewhere. To really come upon this thing as not a concept, empty of willing, wanting, resisting, grasping, and yet shedding light on those movements as they occur. Empty of this overriding sense of self. Me, mine. So the next question, it comes up very frequently, and of course I've posed it to myself all along. Is there such a thing as partial awareness? I've used that term. Being partially aware, because as we all have observed, there can be non-judgmental awareness of a habit, and yet that habit keeps running, has tremendous overriding momentum behind it. So then the question is, well, was this really awareness? Or was it just thinking that I have a habit? Maybe a glimpse of it, and then thinking about it and thinking I can't do anything about it, or maybe I should go with it all the way. We talked about that the other day. Having, what was the example? An overriding desire for marshmallow cups. And not trying to suppress it, but just going with the thing. Maybe ordering a crate of it. Getting so sick of them, I will never want them again. Well, that's a gimmick, but it may work for marshmallow cups. And right in the midst of this animated conversation, we all had things to share. And there then came the question, well, is that the only option we have, either suppressing it or going with it ad nauseum? And of course there's another way, which is not easy, but is very simple, to just be with this, awareing this desire for the cup with all its ramifications, all the little rivulets of wanting and imaging and salivating already at the idea of it. Watching it all, almost scientifically, experimentally, wondering what happens as one sees it all, feels it all, but doesn't go with it. And awareness, as it is there, has this strength. It has tremendous, it's infinite energy, inexhaustible energy. Body tires, but this energy does not tire. But at such an experiment, if you will, there's sort of a shift. There's already a shift taking place from sort of mindlessly, partly mindlessly going with this habit of craving and going for something, And also noticing in this awareness how the brain is so ingenious in providing rationalizations and reasons why it's all right today to get this cup, tomorrow I may not. It pours out supporting statements for the habit to continue. You've noticed it. And to not be fooled by that, to see all of these mini movements of the body-mind in a new light, in sort of a light, being light about it, not forbidding. So, with this kind of an approach, if you will, the habit may diminish or drop and make way for this, or be replaced by this awareness, which was there, but the habit was huge, like huge clouds covering the sun. Not totally. There's some light coming through. Sometimes it's so dark, well, the earth has turned away from the sun. There is no light. It's turned away. But the sun is there. And as the earth keeps turning, there's the sun again, rising. A little bit different color, more red or orange, because of stuff in the atmosphere which is part of the earth. So depending on what all the pollutions and particles are in this mind and body, awareness is clouded over, hidden. Sometimes seemingly not there at all. Because at that moment of total involvement with oneself, one's emotions, one's desires, one's resentments, there isn't even the question where is awareness. There's just rolling with it, like an avalanche. The story contributing plenty to this avalanche. But then this happens, amazingly enough. I don't know whether this happens to monkeys, I don't know, or to apes. A moment of waking up, coming to, and wondering what is going on. And memory shows the involvement, and what it is that one was involved in, or is still involved in. And at this crucial point of coming to a moment of awareness, let's not even call it, a moment of opening, even ever so slightly, will there be enough energy coming through to start watching or keep rationalizing the habit? Not wanting to let go of it, because the body, which is addicted to all of its movements, wants to keep going with them. It doesn't have to keep going with them. That's the amazing discovery. Once there's more opening, fewer pollution clouds, then so much more is seen, and it's much easier to stay here rather than be rolling along. So the metaphor of sun and clouds, or turning away from the sun, these are all beautiful metaphors. They explain something very clearly, may even be inspiring. But can you see right now at this moment that following a metaphor clearly, seeing its meaning, is still not the same as experiencing in this moment the tremendous power of going with a habit, attachment to it, and yet watching it. Some opening. It's not the word opening, it is something that's happening. Possibility of awareing what's happening. Which is what happens in our tumultuous life in our consciousness. And then sometimes people ask, well, what if I sit here and I feel completely at peace? Nothing is disturbing the mind. Do I have to watch something? The question comes up because one hears these endless talks about watching, observing, attending, aware. And then at a moment, the thought arises, am I doing right? I should be awareing something. Can you see that as a thought? Which is habitually checking in on itself, if you will. Am I doing right? Am I doing what she says, what people should be doing here, which would be good for me, etc.? Is that what it is, a habitual thought? And can one see it as that and remain unflappable? Or is it sort of an inquiring thought? Because it could very well be that in sitting peacefully, mind relatively quiet, amazingly quiet, there is somebody there who's holding on to this or even sort of making some effort to keep it going or to produce it, that is open to questioning. Because at a moment of some energy, awareness energy, things can be seen that cannot be seen when it's our involvement with myself and you and them. It comes to mind somebody saying, there's this enormous energy here that I've been having since starting to sit. It's amazing, and all I miss is the action part. What can I do with this energy? And I remember people asking me this when I was still a Zen teacher. Because their energy was aroused, you have no idea how, unless you were in it. With Kyosaku and encouragement talks, a tremendously taut atmosphere, all kinds of energy aroused, and then people saying, I'm totally vibrating with energy, what am I going to do with it? So that doesn't apply to here. And still, it's interesting, the question did come up in a group. I'd love to do something, and of course one wants to do good, do something for other people. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's always open. But there's also this idea of what it means to do something good for other people, good works. And I don't know whether we really know what good works fundamentally in their essence are. Whether one moment or one day or 1 week of emptying of all of this self-concern, at least for moments at a time. And the energy rising, it rises because it isn't bound and stuck up in the self-concerned movements. That's why it's all of a sudden so much energy. whether that in itself is not its own action. Also, making visible and transparent all the movements of the mind, which does not happen without this energy being freed. Without the freeing of it, there's more rationalization going on, and knowing and headlining, repeating from memory. So, not to assume that this energy has to do something or else it's wasted, or a person that feel like exploding. Maybe that's not a bad thing to happen. I don't mean in anger or so, but explode this shell of isolation, meanness. Of course, there's always the garden in which weeds can be pulled. But also experiment, if you will, with sitting quietly, doing nothing and allowing this energy to do what it will, because it's not anything separate to be used by me. It's already a false assumption. We have so little or no experience or precedence in our upbringing, in our culture, for stepping out of the picture as the controller, the doer, the actor. So let's experience, let's find out what happens when there is none, and explode these false notions that this is needed. The me as doer, as controller. Cause some anxious thoughts and feelings that I may be without control, out of control. And beware that all of these things are thoughts and headlines, and let not them trigger this body into fear or apprehension, but realize we don't know. We don't know a life without controlling, and the beauty of it, the freedom of it, the creativity of it, the creativeness of it. Unpremeditated creation. We will end here for today.